morning.
Hi, Rosa.
Firstly, has the storm and the bad weather had any effect on your preparations for Southampton and your travel plans?
Potentially the travel plans. Yeah, we'll see how today goes. I think our plan, as always, is to travel today. But we'll seek advice from the authorities in the airport and everyone involved to whether it's safe to fly. If it's not, we could end up travelling tomorrow morning.
You would fly tomorrow morning then potentially rather than getting the bus, because that's a long journey if you're going on the team coach.
Yeah, it is a long journey, and also there's no guarantee with the wind and the conditions that what you think might be an 8-9 hour journey might turn into a 12-13 hour journey. So we've got to be careful, I think, in that respect. So I think it's probably best that we look to do that, but nothing's guaranteed. We'll seek advice and try and make the right decision.
You've had a free week in the sense there's been no midweek game. Has that been a good thing for you?
I think it was a good thing initially because I think it gave us a chance to deal with some of the physical issues we had in the Bournemouth game. I think there's no doubt when you look back at that game and you watch it firsthand, the players were fatigued, and I think there was a big element of that was the reason behind our performance. So I think with the games that we had, and when you look back to sort of the end of the week, we had Wolves late on Wednesday and then an early kickoff. I think that just swung it against us really in terms of our physical outputs, taking nothing away from Bournemouth, who played very well. But so it gave us a chance just to rest a few bodies and minds, and then come back and start work.
So have the players had a couple of days off at the start of this week before coming back in to build towards Southampton?
Yeah, some did. I think we tried to manage it against the players that needed rest and the players that needed work. So we've tried to make sure that now everyone's on the same page, and we should be fine going into the next game.
Just want to ask you about a couple of players. Firstly, Nick Pope, who I think last week you said would potentially be close for this weekend. Is there a chance he'll be in the squad?
Yeah, there's a chance he'll be in the squad. I think he's started training with the group again, and it's great to see Nick back and his presence and his positivity that he brings. Seen him do some really good things this week, so yeah, delighted to have him back in the mix.
And is it still a bit too early for Callum Wilson?
Yeah, it's too early for Callum. Callum's still on track for, I think, right at the beginning of February, if my memory serves me right. He's making good progress. We're trying to do the right things with him and make sure that he is robust enough and has all the work behind him and the load behind him before he starts training with the group. But he seems very positive, and what a massive player that would be to welcome back.
Finally, a couple of questions on Southampton. Take you back to the opening weekend. You had a player sent off. Southampton dominated possession, 11v11, and then obviously with the advantage, but you won that match 1-0, which was a huge result for you to start the season.
Yeah, it was. It was a really difficult game, as we knew it would be, because newly promoted team, very really possession-based principles, and we didn't start the game particularly well. Then you have the sending off, and it's a real challenge for the players mentally then to regroup and still find a way to win that game. Was a great start to the season for us in terms of results. But I thought Southampton that day showed their qualities. They're a very good technical team. They made the game difficult for us, but I was absolutely delighted, as I say, with how we responded to that moment.
And after a change of manager, are they still very much possession-based, do you think, or have they altered their style of play?
I'd say they're more mixed now. I'd say that there's still definitely elements of that possession-based play in their game. I don't think that will go away quickly, because they've been trained that way for a long period of time, and obviously the new manager's obviously embracing that as well. But I think you've seen definite changes in potentially structure and off the ball. I think it's probably been the biggest change, where you've seen a very aggressive man-for-man style off the ball, which is something we're going to have to do well against and try and combat. I think they've been competitive in the games. It's a very difficult moment for them, because in the games they've been in every one near enough, and have just ended up on the wrong side of the results.
Thanks, Razor. Keith, Sky Sports.
Eddie, with the travel tomorrow, if you have to go in the morning, what kind of impact could that make for your preparations? Because we don't really see that much these days, do we? Especially for a long journey like that. Most Premier League teams at elite level would travel the night before if they could.
Yeah, I don't think it changes too much, to be honest. I think we've done it before ourselves. We've travelled on the day for a 5:30 kickoff, especially if the airport's close to the ground, and sometimes that's the easiest way. You're in and you're out. Through a 3 o'clock kickoff, that's slightly unusual, but it's something we just have to adapt to. I don't see an issue with it.
And what about for training today? Because it's obviously quite wild out there at the moment. Do you train as normal? Is there a danger to the players?
Well, it is slightly windy, I have to say. I struggled to get in a second ago. No, I think hopefully we can find a place that is sheltered enough so the ball doesn't deviate too much and we can actually train normally. We do have a dome that we use, but it's whether that's safe, because that's the strongest winds I've ever seen here or felt here. So, fingers crossed we can train normally.
You mentioned a couple of the players there that have missed the last few weeks. Sven obviously started against Bournemouth last week, but then was taken off at half-time. How is he with his recovery and the fact that he's had quite a few games in a short period of time? Yeah,
it was a challenge for Sven, and I think Fabi has been ill and he wasn't 100% fit. And then we had Sven, who had done really, I think he's been magnificent since his return, but obviously that was a challenge for him, and I thought he looked a little bit fatigued in the game. Naturally, because he's been thrust into action, which has been a great thing for him. Minimal time to think, just straight back in, and he's got to find his rhythm. And by and large, I think he's been excellent in all respects. But a challenging few days for him. But he's one player that we've tried to look after, and he's had a bit longer to recover. And Fabi now hopefully is over his illness as well.
On Miggy, it felt last week, not through anything you said, but just from what we're hearing elsewhere, that he may have played his last game. He could have been on his way. He's still here. Is there still a chance he could leave before the end of the window, and where is his head at with everything at the moment?
I think Miggy's head has been very, very solidly here. He's been brilliant in training this week. I've seen not one moment where I thought, I need to address this or speak to him or have a deeper conversation. I think we're both aware of the situation. Yes, there is interest in him from other clubs. There is potentially a chance he could leave before the window, but until that moment, and if that moment never arrives, he's still a valuable member of the squad. We love him to bits. He's got a great energy and character. That's never changed for a second. He's been the ultimate professional, and let's see what happens.
Just finally from me, looking at last week's game, and you kind of alluded to it there, but are you confident from what you've seen this week and speaking to the players that last week's performance, with such a big drop-off given your high standards, was a one-off? Are you confident that is a one-off?
Yeah, I'm confident it was a one-off. I've not seen us. I think the closest game to that this season will be Fulham away, where we've dropped in terms of our overall performance levels, dropped that far that you think there has to be a sort of a bigger reason. The players were trying. There was no issue on that side. It's just we had, I think, nothing left to give in that moment. And everyone collectively felt the same way, which is very, very difficult, I think, to then navigate the game. And we were in it until the end, and then the game got away from us in the last couple of minutes. But I think we have to learn from it, though. I think there will be games potentially when we feel like that again in the future. We definitely had games like that last year in our Champions League season where you're running on empty going into the game, but you have to find a solution and you have to find a way to still be competitive. And there's loads of things we could have done better to help us, despite the fact we weren't at our best.
Thanks, Keith. Andy?
Well, Eddie, I was watching the Gallagher end at full-time whistle after full-time whistle on Saturday, and they were singing Eddie Howe's Black and White Army over and over again. What did that show of support mean to you and the players, despite the result and the performance on Saturday?
Well, it always means a lot, Andy. It always means that we're still united, and I think united in victory and defeat is equally important. We try to sort of send that message all the time to the group, to the whole club, really, that good and bad moments we need to be there for each other, and the supporters have never let us down on that. I think they've been absolutely magnificent. I think they could also see the game in the way that we all saw it, that the players were trying. We weren't at our best, that's very, very clear. We have to take responsibility for that, but I don't think there was a lack of effort or any other negative thing that you can label at the players. It was just we had nothing left to give.
You were saying there about some of the players having a couple of days off. We sat down with Tino Livramento in midweek, and he said he felt mentally refreshed after he came back. Did you feel a little bit like that after what has been it's been a torrid run of fixtures, hasn't it?
It's an interesting one for me. I've become accustomed to playing the games and really enjoying the games and preparing the games and everything that goes into that, reviewing the opposition, reviewing our performances. So I don't really I personally don't think necessarily an issue with the mental fatigue. I think it's more what we have to guard against is the obviously the physical fatigue for the players, but also their mental load as well. Which sounds funny, but it's the brain can sometimes dictate how it feels, the body feels, and we need to make sure that they're feeling free and energetic when playing.
You talk about Callum there and doing the right things to kind of ease him back, and what a massive return it would be for Newcastle. Are you doing anything different around Callum to ease him back as you would have done previously, or not?
Well, if we're not, then more for us. You know, we have to. We're always trying different things, trying to learn from previous experiences. And it will be the same for Callum. Callum's trying new things. And no one should ever think that we're steamrolling into the same processes, the same thought patterns, and expecting a different result. So our main aim is to keep Callum fit and keep him on the pitch and keep him available to play, because we know if he does, he's a big player and he'll always score goals. So I know that's what Callum wants, and he's trying his absolute maximum. He's doing everything he can professionally to keep himself on the pitch. And I'm sure everyone's united again in that support for him. You know, we all want the same outcome, to see him back to his best.
It'd be great to see him back as and when that is. Just finally, what sort of Newcastle can the fans making the trip this weekend expect to see down in Southampton?
Well, as I said, we need to learn from Bournemouth. So that game stings, it hurts, and we need a response. I've got no doubt the players will respond after that game, but it has to be a collective response from everybody. And we have to go to Southampton absolutely focused.
Thanks, Andy. Andrew?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
By common consensus, Southampton aren't fighting for their lives any longer. They're actually down. Is that true, and does it make them more dangerous opponents?
No, absolutely not. I don't believe in that. It's a game that we absolutely have to respect our opponent, and we will in everything that we do in our preparation. Southampton are a very proud football club. Obviously have a lot of experience at Southampton, having played for both Bournemouth and Portsmouth. So, very proud football club. You know, great club. We have to be absolutely at our best. I don't think we've ever had an easy game at Southampton. They've always been very difficult, and they've got very good players as well. So it's up to us to show our right mental qualities.
And you must be aware that the last two games they played actually very well, didn't they, against Manchester United, and then their almost comeback against Nottingham Forest suggests actually they are aggressive, they're front-footed, possession-based. They're going to be quite a tough opposition.
Well, they are, and that's why I said what I said. If you look at the Manchester United game, I thought they were outstanding for 80 minutes. That's one of the best performances I've seen at Old Trafford. They were dynamic. Technically very good, as I said earlier, and a goal threat on the day. And then against Nottingham Forest, Nottingham Forest have had a magnificent season, but at 3-0 down, you would, at half-time, that would have been a difficult moment for them, but you saw their character. They came back and could have arguably got something from that game as well.
Can I ask about the Champions League? It looks increasingly likely that England will get that 5th Champions League place, which obviously is great news for Newcastle. Does the Bournemouth result, in a way, put that title talk to bed, and the focus now is very much on winning one of those top 5 places, finishing in the top 5?
We've never talked about anything, and I think that's important to remember. There's always overreactions to everything, so overreactions to winning, overreactions to losing. Created, of course, by outside influences. I think for us, we just have to focus on trying to win the next game and find our momentum again, find our rhythm again, and we need to do that very quickly.
The Deloitte published their list of the wealth of the clubs around the world. Newcastle now 15th. Does that Newcastle have got money clearly, or turnover is increasing, and that's incredibly encouraging. Does it in any way give us a clue about whether Newcastle could be active in the transfer market before the window closes?
Yeah, I think that those things are always interesting to read and absorb. I think we've still got a long way to go when you compare our revenue streams to the clubs certainly above us in that league table. there's a big gap to fill. But certainly nothing's changed in terms of this window and my previous comments this month.
And finally from me, Fabian Schär presumably is fit and available to play tomorrow, so you have 3 fantastic central defenders in fantastic form. You've got a decision to make there at the centre of defence.
Yes.
Thanks, Andrew. We've got
Thank you very
Damien,
much.
Lee, and then Ian.
Hey, you talked earlier about the mental and physical aspects of the fatigue last week. I think we could all understand the physical side of it, but how big an impact can the mental side of things have, particularly after the sort of run of fixtures you've had?
Yeah, I think we looked a little bit. What I meant by that was we looked a little bit cloudy in our thinking at the weekend. Don't think we looked sharp with our decision making. Everything was took a little bit longer than it should have done, and then we were getting caught. But I don't want to labour that point. We didn't play very well. We take responsibility for that. Whatever the circumstances behind it, you have to. Otherwise, it can happen again, and we have to move on from it quite quickly.
And just, sorry to do it, but just to go to PSR, you would understand the figures better than us other fans. But can you, can you understand the frustrations of fans who see clubs like Man City and Forest, who perhaps have fallen foul of the rules, being active in the market when you don't appear to be able to?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one for me to go into. I wouldn't want to talk about other football clubs. I've never been of the opinion that I'm able to do that because I don't know their facts and their history. I only know this club, and I have to stick to commenting on us.
Thanks, Damien. Lee Ryder?
Eddie, just on recruitment potentially in January, is it fair to say you've got a position in mind if you could improve, or have you got an open book basically?
No, I've always said we have to do the work. So we have to prepare as if we can recruit, and I think that's the best way to be. So we've done the work. We know what we potentially would do. We know what positions we potentially would recruit in, but it's not for me to talk here. But it's just so everyone knows that the work's gone on, because I think otherwise you lose track of the market, you lose track of players, you lose valuable knowledge that you may need for the future. So we've done all the work that we need to.
Just on the PSR again, do you feel like the rules are fair at the minute? It feels like a bit of an injustice that Man City can just go out and spend 125 million just because they fell behind, and like we're at this position where we can't move basically. That doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, I mean, I've commented a lot on the rules. I don't know what more I can add really to it. My big thing is the incentive to sell your academy products or the players that have a book value of 0. That doesn't seem right to me. When you put all that effort into the players and you guide them through various age groups, the club and the coaches at the centres and the academies invest that time, they're the players with the most incentive to sell. I don't agree with that, and there's probably a lot more I don't agree with, but it's not the forum to express it.
Thanks, Lee. Ian?
Morning, Eddie. In a recent interview, Sir Alex Ferguson said that while his memory of the great Manchester United nights fades, he said he still remembers every detail of the big defeats and the heavy defeats. Is that the same with you?
Yeah, it is, unfortunately. For some reason, the brain seems to store those memories a lot more vividly and a lot more stronger and a lot more with a lot more feeling than the positive ones. So yeah, I could probably do the same. But I think that's healthy in a way. As long as you harvest it in the right way, it's healthy to help propel you then to make sure that doesn't happen again. The feeling that I felt on Saturday night, just based around purely our performance, not so much the result, the performance is a horrible feeling that every manager will experience, but it then forces you to do all the work and preparation, training, dedication to try and escape that feeling for as long as possible.
And on the same masochistic theme, you mentioned a few weeks ago...
Oh, please, bring it on.
A few weeks ago, you mentioned that on the trip back from Brentford, yourself and Graham Jones, you actually went through the entire match just an hour or two later. Was that the same last Saturday?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I had to watch it straight away. So as soon as I got home, yeah, great Saturday night for my family. But yeah, it was me watching the game because I have to find what I think the answers are. for my own peace of mind, really, so then I can enjoy what's to come.
So can you confirm you're a masochist?
Yeah, I mean, I think I like to face the reality. I don't like to hide away from it. So if there's a truth to be found, if there's something I need to expose just with my own eyes, then I'll try and confront it. I think as a manager, when you're trying to lead a club of this size, I think you have to try and face the truth sometimes and not hide away from it.
Thanks, Ian. We'll go to Craig, Chris, and then Luke. Craig.
Morning, Eddie. You sat here last week and you warned of short-term pain. I think we all knew what you meant by that with regards to PSR and transfers. Yep. Did the subsequent game against Bournemouth expose sort of potentially a longer-term issue in terms of you needing that squad depth now? We're not sort of pushing you, saying you've got to bring that in this month, but longer-term, is there a real need there to have more quality and more players? Because at the moment you're working with a pool of 12, 13 really at most, you would say.
Yeah, I mean, I get your point. I think it's a difficult one because I think when you look at our squad at the moment, we're sort of a little bit heavy on defenders, which is not necessarily a negative thing, but just the balance is slightly off. You know, our attacking players, we've lost Harvey, Callum, and so now our attacking options from the bench in terms of forward areas is slightly limited. So I think that probably highlights the point you're trying to make a bit more. I think we've got real quality in a lot of positions, just maybe not in that top line. And that, of course, when you're looking to make attacking subs and change the game, they're the ones that you want. So I think that's a slight issue for us. But in terms of the quality of the squad and the quality of players we have, I think we have 20 fit players at the moment. I think they're outstanding players, and I think our squad's really strong. I think the second point I want to make to your question is just freshness of the squad. I think when you go consecutive windows without freshening the group in any major way, I think you run, I've said this before, you potentially could run into difficult waters with staleness, and I think healthy rotation of the squad in terms of transfers in and out is important.
A slightly different subject as well. Plans are coming along with regard to the training ground. Now at Bournemouth, you've said to us previously you were all over those plans of a training ground you never actually got to work in. Do you want to be involved this time? Will you be involved?
No, I probably don't think I will be. I think that will be for other people to design. I think you've got to remember the history of Bournemouth. I was all over everything because there wasn't the infrastructure. I don't mean that in a negative way. There just wasn't necessarily the infrastructure at that club that there is here. So we'd gone from League Two to the Premier League. So you can imagine there was a lot of work to do to build the club upwards. This is a very different football club, and I think with decisions regarding training ground and stadiums, I'll be very much in the background, probably hearing what's happening with the experts involved, and then hopefully looking on in awe at what we're going to do.
Thanks, Craig. Chris.
Morning, Eddie. You said there's still a chance that Miguel Almiron could go this window. Is that the same true of Lloyd Kelly?
I think slightly different situation with Lloyd. I've seen a little bit of the speculation on Lloyd. We've certainly not had any bid anywhere close to making the club, I think, make a decision on that. Lloyd's an integral part of what we're doing from my perspective. His challenge is to try and work his way into the team. He's only just arrived, so I think he's got a lot to achieve here. So a very different situation.
And on that, was it frustrating then to see an employee of an alternative club, I suppose you have an interest, comment on Lloyd Kelly publicly?
Well, I think whenever your players are talked about by other clubs, I don't think that's ideal. And certainly I would try not to do that myself regarding players contracted to other clubs as well.
Thank you. Luke?
I've completely forgotten what I was going to say. Are you effectively done for the window in terms of incoming? Is it? Can we say that now? Are you done?
I don't know how many times I've got to say it.
One more.
Well, but I don't.
You think you're done?
But you don't know. You never say never. So I'm not saying you'll be playing this back to me, going, "Well, you said no."
Definitely would. Yeah.
Yeah. But at this moment, as we stand, we've not been active in terms of incomings.
I only asked that because it's just a message worth getting. I know you've said it, but there still seems to be this idea that you're lying or the player could come in later in the window. Not you lying, but there seems to be this idea, because the window's so quiet, people are kind of building this narrative that clubs are just saying they're not doing anything and then they're going to do anything, but you couldn't be much clearer on it, and have been since probably December.
Yeah, even further back. I think, look, I'm certainly not lying. I'd never intentionally lie to the supporters and try and mislead anybody. We're not in a position to be active in the market as we currently sit here now. That might change if something happens.
That's it. Thank you.
We'll go to Jordan, Kieran, and Martin.
Morning. Just similar to Chris's question, a lot of the noise around Lloyd seems to be from the buyer side. Is that frustrating for you, and is it unsettling for the player as well?
It's not ideal, but I haven't seen Lloyd distracted. I haven't seen a player that's head and heart is not in Newcastle, which is really important for me. If that was the case, then I'd certainly be addressing that with him. He's trained well. He's fighting for a place, and that's what I expect him to do.
And the speculation around Miggy and Lloyd, do you expect any more potential outgoings this month? There's been speculation around Odyssey's back at Demos this week with Saudi Arabia as well.
So it sort of attached to Luke's question there, I'm not ruling anything out in terms of players leaving, but certainly not our core established players in the team, but there might be movement in certain other players.
Thank you. Kieran?
Morning. The agent of Abdul Qadir Kusanov said Newcastle were close to the deal, but PSR played a part in that. How frustrating is that when obviously you're identifying players and you can't get it done, I guess?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the question Lee asked me. We've done the work. So that's where I say we have identified players that we'd like to sign. We've spoken to the representatives because you have to do the process right. If something happens and we are able to recruit, you can't then start from zero. So yeah, of course we're seeing players that we've identified and liked and targeted move to other clubs, but that's always part of the game.
And with the restrictions you're facing, do you think we'll see the owner's ambition really in the infrastructure that you mentioned earlier, the training ground, the stadium? Is that maybe where we'll see, them come to the table?
Yeah, I'd certainly like to think so. I think that's really important, and I always say that about when you're trying to build a football club upwards and forwards. The infrastructure is so important. The training grounds where the players live day to day, that environment is key. It can help you recruit players. It can help you keep players happy. We need world-class facilities if the club's ambitions are to be realised. And then, of course, that's interlinked with the stadium. And our stadium's fantastic now, and I love playing there. But if we are to improve, whether that means staying or leaving, whatever the outcome, trying to bring world-class facilities here will be a game changer for us.
Okay, we're very tight for time. We'll go Martin, Dominic and Gary.
Hi Eddie, just a very quick one. You've touched on it already. How hard is it not being able to strengthen your team or your squad in a window?
I don't think it's necessarily hard, but I think it's the challenge for us is when you go a long period of time. As I said earlier, I think that can bring you challenges, not impossible challenges to overcome, but some hurdles I think you have to navigate. My wish has always been to try and recruit a player every window, to bring in that fresh face, to boost everybody, to increase competition. Loads of healthy reasons and research behind that, and we've always feel that we've done well off the back of that. Now, of course, we did bring players in the summer, but a different type of profile of signing, and I think that's certainly a challenge for us.
Thank you. Dom?
Just on Martin Dubravka, a few weeks ago you said there wouldn't be an official announcement or statement regarding his future. Can you just confirm that some form of agreement has been reached with him to keep him at least beyond this current transfer window?
Yeah, I believe talks have progressed well. I'm not 100% sure where they stand right now, but I think we're moving forwards together.
And with Nick Pope available for selection, Martin Dubravka as well, what would be your message to both players heading into an important run of fixtures?
Well, I think it doesn't matter whether they're goalkeepers or any other position. We need players performing at their best levels, and I'll always pick the best one.
Thanks, Dom. Gary, to finish.
Hi, Eddie. Obviously, you mentioned there last Saturday you spent rewatching the match. You probably rewatched it again. Just wondered, what's the biggest thing you learned from last week, and what's the thing you want to see improved most tomorrow?
I think whenever you see a game like that, there isn't one thing. If there was one thing, it would have been easy to fix there and then. It was a combination of things. As I said earlier, without repeating myself, but it was definitely linked to our physical feeling. So I'd love to see that change this weekend. I'd love to see us full of energy, full of running, sprinting, all the things in the hallmark really that we've done so well in the last group of games. You could see physically we weren't there. We were quite reactive, I think, in the game instead of being proactive. So I think first and foremost, before you talk about the tactical and technical elements of the game, physically you've got to turn up at this level to win.